The galaxy had long known fear, and it had a name: the Draxar. They were enormous, with rippling muscles under thick armor-like skin, and eyes that burned like molten metal. Wherever they went, planets trembled. Worlds that resisted were annihilated. Worlds that surrendered lived only to tell stories of their might. Yet for all their power, no one loved them. Not a single ally had ever existed for the Draxar. They were feared, yes, but alone. Among the stars, a small human colony called Ardent Prime orbited a blue and green planet. It was a quiet place, tucked away on the edge of known space, far from trade routes and war zones. Its people were ordinary, not soldiers or adventurers, but farmers, engineers, and scientists. The colony thrived not because of strength, but because of cleverness and caution. Their walls were modest, their defenses simple, but their minds were sharp. Commander Elias Kane had arrived at Ardent Prime only 6 months earlier, sent by the Galactic Coalition to monitor the border systems. He was a human in his late 30s, with short-cropped dark hair, a steady gaze, and a mind that had earned respect on multiple missions. Kane had faced many dangers before, but nothing like the intelligence reports that now filled his quarters. The sensors showed a fleet, massive, organized, dangerous, gathering in the nearby Nebulon Rift. And among the ships, one signal stood out: a Draxar scout observing Ardent Prime closely, but without the usual hostility. Kane leaned back in his chair, studying the readings. The scout's patterns were precise, almost hesitant. Draxar never hesitated. They acted with the certainty of predators who believed in their superiority. Yet this one was different. He hesitated, paused, watched. It was curiosity, not contempt. Or at least it seemed so. In the command center, the human officers whispered among themselves. "It's a trap," one said. Another added, "We shouldn't respond. They'll destroy us before we can blink." Fear hung in the air, thick and heavy, but Kane stayed calm. He had faced impossible situations before and survived. Fear could not guide their actions. Strategy could. Kane made a decision that surprised even his officers. Instead of hiding, instead of preparing to flee, he ordered a transmission. A simple message in the universal galactic standard language: "We know you are watching. We mean no harm. Let us communicate." The room went silent. Many officers looked at Kane as if he had gone mad. "Sir, are you insane?" one asked. "This is the Draxar. They don't negotiate. They destroy." "Not all of them," Kane replied, "and I intend to find out which kind this one is." Hours passed. The Draxar scout replied, not with words, but with coordinates. A meeting point in neutral space. It was risky, yes, but Kane was not a man who shied away from risk. He suited up and boarded the small human shuttle, accompanied by 2 security officers. His heart beat steadily, but his mind was alert. Every scenario had been considered, every contingency planned. The shuttle slipped through the dark void, past glowing nebulae and drifting asteroids, until the massive Draxar scout ship loomed before them. It was enormous, easily 3 times the size of Kane's shuttle, with jagged armor plates that shimmered faintly in the starlight. The hatch opened slowly. Kane and his team stepped inside, feeling the oppressive heat and power emanating from the creature they had come to meet. Vorik stood before them. The Draxar was immense, easily 10 feet tall, with skin like burnished iron. His eyes glowed softly, less aggressive than Kane had expected, though still intimidating. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the ship's engines. Kane raised his hand in greeting. "I am Elias Kane," he said calmly. "I come in peace." Vorik tilted his head, considering. Then, with a deep, rumbling voice that echoed through the chamber, he said, "Peace. Unusual. Why?" Kane took a deep breath. "Because fear is not the only way to live. I want to understand you, and perhaps you can understand us." The Draxar's expression changed subtly. Curiosity flickered, though Kane could not tell if it was genuine or another layer of the Draxar's cunning. Vorik motioned with a massive claw. "Follow, you speak boldly, human." "Few dare." Inside the ship, Kane saw the Draxar crew. They were enormous, muscular, and armed with weapons humans had only seen in simulations. But there was no immediate hostility, no attack. They observed him carefully, whispering in guttural tones that Kane could not understand. Over the next hours, Kane spoke with Vorik, trying to pierce the veil of fear and reputation. He learned that not all Draxar were cruel. Some were tired of the endless cycle of fear and violence. Some longed for more than dominance and destruction. The problem was not power, it was isolation. The galaxy had feared them so much that love, trust, and friendship had never been extended. Without companionship, many Draxar had grown bitter, others curious, and a few even regretful. Kane listened carefully, asking questions without judgment. He spoke of humanity's struggles, of conflicts where courage and empathy could change outcomes, and of alliances that built lasting peace. Vorak seemed intrigued. "You speak differently than others," he said. "Humans, fragile yet bold." "Strange." Kane smiled faintly. "Fragile sometimes, yes. But we survive. And we help those who wish to survive, too." Their conversation was interrupted when the Draxar communications officer warned of an approaching patrol fleet. Vorak's expression darkened. "The others will not understand. They trust only fear." Kane nodded. "Then we need to show them something else. Courage, strategy, unity. You have power, but you also have choices." For the next several days, Kane remained aboard the Draxar ship, learning their ways and showing them human tactics. He demonstrated how humans could outthink, outmaneuver, and sometimes even outlast beings far stronger and faster. Vorak observed keenly, noting Kane's ingenuity, calm under pressure, and willingness to risk his life for his team. It was a perspective few Draxar had ever considered, that strength without wisdom, without respect for others, could be meaningless. But not all Draxar were receptive. Messages from the fleet's elders arrived, harsh and demanding. They questioned Kane's intentions, doubted his sincerity, and urged Vorak to eliminate him. Vorak hesitated, torn between loyalty to his species and the strange admiration he felt for the human. Kane sensed the tension and spoke plainly. "Your reputation frightens many, but it can also imprison you. Fear will keep the galaxy at a distance, yes, but admiration, trust, that can be far stronger." Vorak said nothing for a long moment, only staring at the stars outside the ship. Then he finally spoke. "Perhaps you are correct. Perhaps there is more to life than fear." Kane knew this was only the first step. One conversation could not change centuries of isolation. One human could not undo generations of dread. But he also knew that even the smallest spark could ignite a fire. And Kane had come to Ardent Prime not just to survive, but to prove that even the most feared beings could be understood, and perhaps even loved, if someone dared to try. As the human shuttle prepared to return to Ardent Prime, Kane turned to Vorak. "We will need more than words. If we are to change their hearts, we must act. Together." Vorak considered this. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Together. But beware, human. Many will try to stop us. The path will not be easy." Kane smiled. "I did not expect easy. I expect possible. And sometimes, that is enough." The shuttle detached from the Draxar ship and returned to Ardent Prime. Kane's officers stared at him, unsure whether to be relieved or terrified. He did not explain everything, only saying, "We have a chance, and we will take it." In the days that followed, Kane continued to study the Draxar fleet, observing patterns, analyzing weaknesses, and preparing for the next contact. He knew that changing the galaxy's perception of the Draxar would take courage, intelligence, and patience. But he also knew that humanity had always faced impossible odds, and that they had survived not by fear, but by daring to act when others trembled. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, Vorak watched the human colony, thinking not of conquest or fear but of curiosity, and for the first time of something he could not name, a spark that humans called hope. Days passed since Commander Elias Kane returned from the Draxar ship, but the memory of his encounter with Vorak haunted him. He could not shake the feeling that something had shifted in the vast galaxy, something subtle but powerful. Vorak had been different from every other Draxar he had studied, curious, thoughtful, capable of understanding beyond the reach of fear. Kane knew that the task ahead would not be easy. Convincing an entire species feared for centuries to trust, even partially, was a challenge unlike any other he had faced. He spent hours in the command center, analyzing data, simulating possible outcomes, and reviewing communications with Vorak. Kane's officers, though wary, had begun to respect his judgment. Lieutenant Mara Chen, his second-in-command, approached him quietly one evening. "Sir," she said, her voice low, "you know the elders won't accept your words. They won't let you influence Vorak or the others. If they find out, it could mean war. Real war." Kane looked at her calmly. "I know, But fear alone has not held them together for long. There are cracks, small ones, and that's where change begins. We have to show them there is a better way, before the elders force them back into the old ways. The next day, Kane made his move. A small shuttle carried him once more to the Draxar ship, this time accompanied by a translator droid and a team of negotiators. The moment they entered, Kane felt the weight of the Draxar's presence. Vorak greeted him, nodding slightly as though acknowledging both the risk and the potential. "Human," Vorak rumbled. "You return. Do you understand what you ask? Your species is small, fragile. You wish to teach us. What, compassion?" Kane smiled faintly. "Not just compassion, understanding, trust, courage without cruelty. You have power, Vorak, but power without wisdom is emptiness. The Draxar seem to consider this. Wisdom is learned through survival," Vorak said, "and survival is earned by fear." "That may have worked before," Kane replied, "but fear cannot build alliances. Fear cannot build strength that lasts. It only isolates you. Loneliness is a prison, and I've seen enough prisons in my life." For hours they discussed strategy, ethics, and the future of the Draxar. Kane explained how humans thrived not because of strength alone, but because of teamwork, clever thinking, and courage that did not rely on intimidation. Vorak listened intently, asking questions, challenging some points yet never dismissing Kane outright. Slowly, Kane noticed something remarkable. The younger Draxar crew, who had been quiet and tense, began whispering among themselves, exchanging ideas, and even nodding at points Kane made. Not everyone agreed. A senior officer, a massive Draxar named Tharok, scowled as he watched the human. "You speak like the weaklings of your species," he growled. "We are feared. We are respected. We do not negotiate. This human will bring us ruin." Kane met Tharok's gaze steadily. "Fear has kept you alive, yes. But respect and cooperation will make you stronger than fear ever could. You do not have to destroy to command obedience. You do not have to isolate yourselves to survive. The galaxy can admire you, not because it trembles at your name, but because it trusts your strength and wisdom." For a long moment, the room was silent. Tharok's glare did not waver, but Kane noticed a subtle tension among the other Draxar. Some leaned forward, listening, intrigued despite themselves. It was clear that the old ways were beginning to face resistance. Days turned into weeks as Kane worked tirelessly aboard the Draxar ship. He shared human techniques for problem-solving, negotiation, and tactical planning. He demonstrated how even a weaker opponent, properly guided, could turn the tide of battle. Vorak watched closely, impressed by Kane's skill, patience, and fearlessness. Yet danger was never far. Messages from the Draxar elders arrived regularly, warning Vorak to dismiss the human's influence. The elders feared change. They feared weakness. And they feared Kane's ability to inspire a new generation of Draxar. Kane realized that a direct confrontation with the elders would be inevitable, but he also understood that he could not face them alone. He needed Vorak's trust and the tentative loyalty of the younger Draxar. One evening, Kane proposed a bold plan. He gathered Vorak, Tharok, and several key crew members in the strategy chamber.
"There is a system near the Nebulon Rift," he said.
"A hostile alien warlord is planning to invade. They will destroy anything in their path. This is an opportunity not for war but for proof. We can show your species that strength combined with cooperation can save lives, and perhaps the galaxy will see the Draxar differently." Tharok snorted, clearly skeptical. "A test? Why risk the fleet for humans?" "Because," Kane said calmly, "this is more than a test. This is a chance to change everything. Fear has ruled your lives for centuries. This is your chance to show the galaxy what you could be if you chose trust over terror." Vorak remained silent for a long time. Then he finally nodded. "We will go. But human, know this, if you fail, it will not be forgotten." "I do not intend to fail," Kane replied. The preparations began immediately. Kane coordinated with Ardent Prime to mobilize a small fleet of human ships. Vorak organized the Draxar vessels, assigning young crews to positions where Kane's strategies could be applied. The older Draxar watched skeptically, their distrust barely hidden. As they approached the hostile system, tension mounted. The warlord's fleet was large, aggressive, and well-armed. Kane's team studied their formations, identifying weaknesses. He explained his plan to Vorak and the young Draxar crew. Maneuver swiftly, anticipate the enemy's patterns, and protect the vulnerable colonies while minimizing unnecessary destruction. The battle began with chaos. Laser beams cut through the void. Ships exploded in bursts of fire and debris, and the air was thick with the tension of life and death decisions. Kane guided his fleet with precision, using daring maneuvers that leveraged human ingenuity and Draxar strength in perfect coordination. Vorak's powerful ship smashed through the enemy lines, while younger Draxar squads followed Kane's lead, trusting him in ways they had never trusted before. In the midst of battle, Kane noticed a group of Draxar warriors caught in an ambush. Without hesitation, he piloted his shuttle directly into the fray, taking heavy fire to save them. Vorak watched, stunned. No human had ever risked so much for Draxar lives before. Kane's courage, selflessness, and quick thinking turned the tide for that squad, allowing them to regroup and continue the fight. Slowly, the battle began to shift. The warlord's fleet, expecting easy conquest, struggled against the combined strategy of human ingenuity and Draxar might. Kane coordinated maneuvers that allowed the Draxar to use their superior strength without recklessness, saving lives and minimizing unnecessary destruction. As the battle ended, the warlord's fleet retreated, defeated and humiliated. Kane and Vorak stood side by side, surveying the damage. The younger Draxar crews cheered, not out of fear, but from admiration for what they had accomplished together. Even some older Draxar, including Tharok, looked on with grudging respect. Vorak turned to Kane, his voice quiet but firm. "Human, you have done what I thought impossible. You have shown the Draxar another way." Kane nodded. "We've only begun. This is just the first step. Fear may have ruled your species for centuries, but now you've seen the strength in trust, in cooperation, and in courage without cruelty." The return journey to Ardent Prime was filled with cautious optimism. Kane debriefed his officers and the Draxar crews, ensuring that lessons were understood and bonds strengthened. The galaxy had seen the first proof that the Draxar could fight for protection rather than destruction, that they could be allies rather than tyrants. Back on Ardent Prime, Kane addressed the colony. "The Draxar are not monsters," he told them. "They are powerful, yes, but they can choose a better path. Fear has kept them alive, but it will not define them forever. Courage, wisdom, and trust can change even the most feared beings." For the first time in history, humans and Draxar shared a moment of understanding, not as master and subject, not as predator and prey, but as allies. Kane knew that the journey was far from over. The elders of the Draxar fleet would not relinquish their old ways easily. Many systems across the galaxy still trembled at the name of the Draxar, but Kane had ignited a spark that could grow into a fire capable of changing an entire species. And somewhere among the stars, Vorak and the younger Draxar crew looked toward the galaxy with new eyes. They had seen fear replaced with courage, domination replaced with strategy, and loneliness replaced with trust. And for the first time they wondered, what could they become if they chose to follow this new path? Kane stood among them, tired but resolute, knowing that the hardest battles were yet to come. The elders would resist, rivals would challenge, and fear would always lurk in the shadows. But for now, the first step had been taken, and the story of change had begun. Humanity had shown the way, and the Draxar had begun to listen. The galaxy, ever watchful, waited. And for the first time, hope, not fear, was what it saw. The victory against the warlord had sent ripples across nearby star systems. News of the Draxar's unusual cooperation with humans reached even distant colonies. Some were skeptical, expecting treachery. Others were cautiously hopeful. Commander Elias Kane knew that true change would not come from a single battle, but from repeated action, courage, and consistency. He also knew that the Draxar elders who clung to fear as a tool of power would not accept this transformation easily. Back on Ardent Prime, Kane prepared for the next phase. Vorak and his younger Draxar officers had agreed to accompany him to several neutral systems, where unrest and conflict provided opportunities for the Draxar to demonstrate that strength could be used for protection, not destruction. Kane's plan was simple yet bold. They would intervene wherever civilizations were threatened, not to conquer, but to defend. The first mission took them to the Virelia cluster, a group of small planets under threat from raiders. Kane coordinated with Vorak, and together they developed a plan combining human ingenuity with Draxar might. The younger Draxar crews listened carefully, learning to follow strategy instead of instinct alone. Vorak's presence inspired them, and Kane's calm, reasoned approach earned their trust. When they arrived at the cluster, they found the raiders attacking a mining colony. Kane led a squad of human ships in a diversion, drawing enemy fire while Vorak's fleet moved swiftly to protect the civilians. The Draxar fought with precision and restraint, a stark contrast to their usual devastating force. Civilians watched in awe as beings once feared as merciless predators now shielded them with strength and courage. During the battle, Kane noticed a Draxar warrior hesitating before destroying an enemy vessel. The human pilot had a choice to finish the target or disable it to minimize loss of life. Kane's guidance was clear. Strength is not measured by destruction alone. Use it to protect, not to punish. The Draxar warrior followed his advice, and the enemy ship surrendered instead of exploding. Kane's heart swelled with cautious hope. This was what he had come for. A demonstration that fear could be replaced with wisdom and restraint. By the time the battle ended, the Varelia cluster was secure. Civilians cheered not only for their survival, but for the courage of the Draxar. Even the raiders, who had expected brutal slaughter, surrendered in shock at being shown mercy. Kane watched as Vorak observed the scene quietly. The giant Draxar's eyes softened, not with fear, not with aggression, but with pride and understanding. "This is different," Vorak said, his voice low. "I have never seen my people fight with purpose beyond fear." "Change begins with small steps," Kane replied. "One act at a time. One choice at a time." Today they saw us as protectors, not predators. Tomorrow the galaxy may start to believe it too. Word of their success spread quickly. More colonies and smaller systems began to approach the Draxar cautiously, some requesting protection, others offering to trade and cooperate. Kane realized that perception was as important as action. They had to show consistency, patience, and courage to slowly rebuild trust. However, not all reactions were positive. Messages from the Draxar elders arrived with increasing hostility. They accused Vorak of betraying the species, called Kane a dangerous human, and demanded immediate cessation of all cooperative efforts. Vorak convened a council aboard the fleet, bringing together the younger Draxar who had followed Kane's lead. "We cannot ignore the elders," Vorak said. "But we also cannot return to fear. Humanity has shown us a path, and many of us want to follow it." One young Draxar officer spoke up, voice trembling slightly. "We have seen the humans fight not for glory but to save lives. They are not weak. They are strong in ways we never understood." Vorak nodded. "Then we must act wisely. We will face opposition, but if we falter now, all progress is lost." Kane joined the council, presenting a bold strategy. "We need to demonstrate unity and protection on a scale the elders cannot ignore. There is a system under threat from a coalition of raiders and mercenaries. If we save it together, the message will be clear. Draxar strength can be a force for good. And the galaxy will see it." Preparation took days. Kane trained human pilots and Draxar crews to operate as one unit, practicing maneuvers that combined speed, agility, and raw power. Vorak worked tirelessly, speaking to the younger Draxar about the value of wisdom, courage, and trust. Even Tharok, once skeptical and resistant, began to follow Kane's strategies with measured precision, seeing the results firsthand. When they arrived at the threatened system, chaos greeted them. Ships fired indiscriminately, planets were at risk, and civilians scrambled for safety. Kane's fleet split into coordinated units. Human ships distracted and controlled the enemy, while Draxar ships protected civilians and neutralized threats with calculated force. Kane's heart raced, but he remained calm, guiding crews, issuing commands, and adjusting strategies in real time. In the midst of battle, Kane spotted a Draxar squad cornered by enemy fire. Without hesitation, he piloted his shuttle into danger, taking heavy hits to shield them. Vorak, seeing this, intervened with his immense strength, clearing a path and saving the human. The younger Draxar crews watched in awe. For the first time, they understood that true courage was not measured by destruction, but by the willingness to protect others even at risk to oneself. By the end of the engagement, the raiders were defeated, and the system was secure. Civilians cheered, Draxar and humans alike sharing a moment of triumph that went beyond mere victory. Kane looked around at the fleets, the planets the people saved, not for power, not for fear, but for hope. Vorak approached him, voice deep and steady. "Human, you have done something I never imagined. You have shown us a new way to exist, not as monsters feared by all, but as beings capable of respect, courage and protection. Kane smiled, exhausted but determined. The hardest part is still ahead. The elders will resist. Many systems still doubt. But we have begun. That is enough for now. The fleet returned to Ardent Prime as heroes, not just for humans, but for Draxar as well. Kane addressed the assembled crew and civilians, speaking plainly. The galaxy is watching. Fear may have defined the Draxar for centuries, but now we have shown another path. Strength can protect. Courage can inspire. Trust can unite. Today we take the first step towards something greater. For the first time, Draxar and humans stood side by side, not as predator and prey, not as master and subordinate, but as allies. The younger Draxar who had followed Kane's guidance felt a new sense of purpose. They had seen the results of cooperation, bravery, and wisdom. The elders' influence was weakening as the younger generation embraced this new perspective. In the months that followed, the Draxar began to change. Fleets operated with strategy rather than fear. Settlements approached them for trade and protection, and isolated colonies experienced the Draxar as allies, not conquerors. Kane continued to guide them, demonstrating human ingenuity and wisdom, while Vorak mentored his people, blending Draxar's strength with a newfound understanding of compassion. Even Tharok, once a symbol of resistance, began to recognize the benefits of this transformation. He trained younger Draxar in the art of protective strategy, balancing power with restraint. The Draxar name, long associated with terror, slowly began to inspire admiration rather than dread. Kane and Vorak traveled together, visiting systems that had once feared the Draxar. They mediated disputes, protected colonies from hostile forces, and coordinated efforts that required both human creativity and Draxar strength. Everywhere they went, the message was clear. The Draxar could be more than what fear had made them. Finally, as they returned to Ardent Prime, Kane and Vorak stood on the observation deck looking out at the stars. The fleet moved with precision, the colonies they had helped flourished, and the galaxy had begun to see a species long feared in a new light. "You have changed more than a few systems, human," Vorak said quietly. "You have changed the Draxar themselves." Kane nodded. "Not just me. It was all of us, human and Draxar together. Change happens when courage meets opportunity, and the galaxy needs both." Vorak's eyes softened. "Perhaps fear does not have to rule us. Perhaps the galaxy can know strength without hatred, power without cruelty." "Yes," Kane said, "and someday others will see what we have learned here. That the Draxar are not monsters. They are capable of greatness. They are capable of love, not in the way we feel, but in the way we protect, respect, and inspire. And that is enough to change the universe." The fleet continued its journey among the stars, carrying a message that would resonate for generations. Even the most feared beings could choose a new path, and sometimes it took a human to show them the way. The galaxy, once trembling in fear, now watched with hope. And for the first time, the Draxar, feared by all, loved by none, began to be admired, not for terror but for courage, wisdom, and the choice to change.